Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Forest Hills Board of Education, October 27th, 2014. Mr. Tepfer, if you please call roll.
Mrs. Bissinger.
Here.
Dr. Heiss.
Here.
Mr. Hemmelgarn.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Fruman.
Here, and if you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Safety exits, we have one here to my right, your left, two over here, and one in the back of the room. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mrs. Bissinger.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Dr. Heiss.
Yes.
Mr. Hemmelgarn.
Yes.
Mr. Fruman.
Yes. Item 3.1, approval of the Business Advisory Committee minutes from September 8th, 2014.
So moved.
Second. Mr. Tepfer?
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Dr. Heiss.
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger.
Yes.
Mr. Hemmelgarn.
Yes.
Mr. Fruman.
Yes. Item 3.2, approval of the minutes from our regular board meeting of September 22nd, 2014.
So moved.
Second. Mr. Tepfer?
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Dr. Heiss.
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger.
Yes.
Mr. Hemmelgarn.
Yes.
Mr. Fruman.
Yes. Item 4.1, correspondence. Dr. Jackson?
Yes, Mr. Fruman and the board, I do have a couple pieces of correspondence I'd like to share. First of all, I'd like to, although she's not here this evening, I did receive some correspondence from the Ohio Association of EMIS Professionals. And what I'd like to share is in this correspondence is that our EMIS coordinator, Barb Burwanger, received some very special recognition. She achieved the distinction of data manager through the EMIS professionals for the PD and the work that she has done in at that level. That's quite an accomplishment to do, and that she has to, it's renewable every three years. But I did want to share that, and I sent her a nice card in that regard. But I just want to know, I want you to know, Barb Burwanger, our EMIS coordinator, is really one of the best around. So.
Excellent, thank you.
The second thing I'd like to share is a couple things that have recently occurred, some correspondence that we have, and the number one is on October the 8th, some of our students from Anderson High School participated in a mock emergency disaster sort of drill with Anderson Hospital, where a few of our students actually helped participate in some training for their professionals in their emergency room, which was all regarding a fake, so to speak, accident, and there was a chemical spill. And all went well, and our students survived, of course. But I did receive correspondence from Mercy Health and Dr. Fagans in particular thanking us for our help with that. Speaking of Mercy Hospital, just last week, Mercy had their groundbreaking ceremony for their new renovation and addition to their hospital, our Mercy Anderson Hospital, where a number of our students were also recognized for helping design, as 8th graders, a reception area for that. And so they were recognized for that and actually got to participate in the groundbreaking. So that was great as well. In people's mailboxes, either today or in the very near future, the October or fall edition of the Forest Hills Today magazine should be in the mail. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tepfer? Item 4.2, procedures for public commentary. As many of you know, this is not a public meeting, but a meeting held in public. We nevertheless welcome comments. And it looks like I don't know if I've counted 6 or 7 of the cards. Because of the number of cards, we will limit discussion to 3 minutes. I'd also like to remind everybody, public commentary on specific personnel matters is not permitted in an open meeting. We're happy to listen to whatever anyone might have to say, but we would ask that you not call out specific members of personnel within the Forest Hills School District, and we will enforce that if necessary. So we will call on you at the appropriate time in the meeting. Item 5.1, the matter we always look forward to, candidates for graduation. Mr. Broadwater? And Ms. Johnson.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to recommend that the board make a motion to approve the granting of a high school diploma to the following student who has completed all requirements for a diploma from Anderson High School, and that young man's name is Justin McQuaid. Justin, come on up. And I believe Justin's parents are here this evening, so congratulations to you as well.
You want to do them separately, or?
I think Peggy's going to go.
Okay. Likewise, it is my pleasure to present to you a young man today who has completed all of his requirements for graduation, and we are thrilled, actually, that he's joined us tonight. We've really enjoyed working with him on this endeavor. Nicholas Showers, come on up. And his family is here as well, and we would certainly like all of the families that are here for both of these young men to stand and be recognized. We know how valuable your input was in this accomplishment.
Let's have a motion.
Go all the way down.
I move that we commend and grant diplomas to Justin McQuaid from Anderson High School and Nicholas Showers from Turpin High School.
Second.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Hemmelgarn?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
He knows quite a few people in the room.
Thank you. And further commendations, item 6.1, National Merit Scholarship commendations.
Yes. In late September, more than two-thirds, about 35,000 of the approximately 50,000 high scorers on the PSAT received letters of commendation in recognition of their outstanding academic promise. Commended students are named on the basis of a nationally applied selection index scores that does vary from year to year, so they really don't know the target that they're shooting for. Although commended students do not continue in the competition for national merit scholarships, many of these students do become candidates for special scholarships sponsored by corporations and businesses. So Turpin would like to recognize, and if they'd like to come up, Thomas Bentley, Emily Brown, Anna Marie Daly, Laura Farrow, Wilson Macbeth, and Heather Shams. I think some of them stayed home to do homework.
Bring some more up.
And from Anderson High School, when I call your name, if you could please come up, Nathan Bissinger, Holly Christensen, Colleen Dunlap, William Pahutsky, Kelly Polisak, and Hannah Taylor.
Can we have a motion?
I move, very proudly, that we commend the 2014 commended scholars.
Second.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
Mr. Hemmelgarn?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Good job. Mrs. Bissinger, I was expecting you to get a hug at least, but
Well, that cleared things out. We're now on item 7.1, public comments. Because of the number of cards I have, I'm going to limit everybody to 3 minutes. I apologize in advance if I interrupt. It is not my intention to cut anyone off. It is merely my intention to try to hold everybody to 3 minutes. So if I cut you off, please know it's not personal. I'm just trying to keep the meeting moving as required. First up is Krista Byrer.
My husband and I are attending the meeting this evening for 2 reasons. The first is because we have information that we feel needs attention from the school board and the Forest Hills School District community regarding bullying. Our second reason is to request a review and modification of the bullying policy set forth by Forest Hills School District in the handbook. We have one child who attends Nagel Middle School and another child that transferred out of the district from Turpin beginning this fall. She transferred due to bullying issues that occurred her first 2 years at Turpin High School. Some of these incidences were reported to administration at Turpin and some were not, and those were by our child's choice. We decided her transferring out of the district would be the best option, and she left without confrontation. The most recent issue of bullying occurred during the first several weeks of school when we were made aware that a student at Turpin was spreading sexual rumors about our daughter. We quickly found out who it was, and a conversation ensued with administration, the parent, and the student. We were told both verbally and through a detailed email by the parent that she and her daughter were together when they heard these rumors from the district employees, and one who works at Turpin and the other who left the district at the end of the last school year. The district administration investigated the situation, and the superintendent ruled that these allegations were unsubstantiated. Although the parent explicitly stated, both verbally and in an email, that these were 2 adults who are also both parents of children in the district and residents of Anderson Township were involved in spreading these rumors, she adamantly denied this during her interview with the district investigator. To our knowledge, there have been no consequences for the student, nor the district worker involved who is still currently employed at Turpin. The district has also refused confirmation of the district workers who were interviewed. We have extreme concern that rumors involving other students in this district are also being told by these individuals, as well as the parent and the student in question. With respect to the bullying policy in our handbook, we feel it is vague and does not specifically define, quote, repeated action or, quote, serious enough action in regard to bullying behavior. And at this time, consequences for bullying behavior, whether physical or psychological, are at the discretion of administrators and are subjective. We feel that more specific and objective consequences need to be outlined in the handbook so students and parents are aware of what can happen, even on a first offense, no matter who they are in the school district or what their contributions to the school district might be. Our request before the board today is to ask that further review occur to the parent's statement about the original rumors. And secondly, to review and make modifications to the bullying policy and training about bullying in Forest Hills so students can feel safe at school and feel that they will be supported if they report bullying issues and that consequences will be enforced. Thank you for your time and attention to these serious issues and for your help in making the district safe and supportive for all students. As I mentioned, we have a younger child who is scheduled to enroll at Turpin next fall, and we would like to be able to reassure her that she is safe at school and will be supported by teachers and administration and that rules will be enforced. Although today most people are here about the bond issue, we feel that money to improve the structure of a building is meaningless if the students don't feel safe inside. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Byrer. Jen Fitzgerald.
everybody. My name is Jen Fitzgerald. This is my first time, so go easy on me. I am strictly here to be supportive of the transformation. I'm incredibly passionate about this. I have one student in Forest Hills, and when my husband and I moved into Forest Hills, we were newlyweds and didn't intend on being parents. And we solely moved into this community for the school district on resale value of our home. We've been fortunate enough to be able to bring a child into this district, and I am just floored with how this community is in Forest Hills. For all of those people who don't have kids, not only is it good for our kids to support the bond, but it's good for our community. It's good for the resale value of our homes. It's good for all of the businesses that are coming into Anderson. But for our kids, I mean, you can't put money on that. And I personally feel like if I didn't live in Forest Hills, I'd be paying money to send him to a private school that's going to cost me so much more than an increase in my property taxes. And I just really wanted to share my thoughts on that. As a parent, nothing is more important than the kids, and as a resident in this community, having a strong community that people want to move to and being able to resell my house at a higher value strictly because our school district is so fantastic, you can't ask for more than that. So, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Fitzgerald. Jeff Davis.
Hi, my name is Jeff Davis. I'm the Nagel Middle School PTA president, and I'm following Jen and basically going to say very similar thoughts as indicated by the fact that I'm wearing my shirt. But this is the right time to vote for this bond issue. My wife and I are actually very similar to you. We moved here in 1997, newlyweds, no children, specifically because of the school district. We left in 2005 for work, came back in 2011, once again specifically for the schools. And by 2011, with the internet, we checked out everywhere. We looked at Madeira, we looked at Marymount, we looked at Indian Hill, we looked at Sycamore, we looked at Wyoming. And we specifically came back here because of the Forest Hill School District and how well regarded they are. In fact, a little known fact here, Time Magazine just came out, this most recent one, and I don't know if any of you get it, but there's a great article talking about bad teachers. That's not my point, but there's a great piece in there about the quantifiability of what good teaching is. And there was a Harvard economist, his name is Raj Chetty. He is also one of Fortune Magazine's 40 under 40 people to watch, under age 40. Bates Award winner, which is kind of a baby Nobel Prize. Phenomenal, smart man. He did a study with two of his colleagues in December 2011 where he quantified that 1 year of good school teaching, having a good teacher, can increase a student's lifetime earnings by $25,000. Now think about that for a second. 1 year of being in a classroom with a good teacher. We can infer with how great this district is and the rankings we have that we have an abundance of excellent teachers. But we have to give them the tools and the resources they need to continue that excellence. And part of that excellence is having buildings that can accommodate what the future holds. That's what this bond is about. It is the right thing to do at the right time for our teachers. If you multiply the 7,408 kids or whatever we have according to the projection reports from the OFCC by 25,000, you come up with roughly $185 million. That pays for the bond. This is what we're talking about when we say investment in the community. If you've come to any of the Nagel PTA meetings, and I'm sure most of you have not because we are not that well attended, but that's all right. I know you all have very few people have just one child at Nagel. You all have the high school, the elementary school. I get it. But you've heard me talk numerous times about an investment in the community. And yes, it goes to what Jen just said too, property values, resale values. But it is more than that. It is giving our children the benefit right? That they deserve to be productive, capable members and contributing members of our society, and also to increase their own future earnings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Elizabeth Barber.
I'm Elizabeth Barber, and it's actually pretty painful to follow those two with what I'm going to talk about. I've lived in Anderson my entire life. I graduated from Anderson High School, and I have a kindergartner at Air. I love this place. I've stated this several times from this podium. And as much as I support this community and this school district, I have been outspoken about this particular bond issue. Months ago, I addressed the board and the superintendent and referred to a large group of district supporters who have been afraid to speak out because they're fearing retribution. And today, I experienced that retribution. A letter was published in the Around Anderson Township newsletter singling me out as the opposition. It says, I have not presented one viable plan to the board, and I have not provided any detail for a plan. First of all, the opposition is not Elizabeth Barber. The opposition is a large group of people. I have not done this on my own. I have served as a spokesperson because they have been afraid of this. This is exactly why no one is telling you what they think. They don't want this to happen to them. They're respected, well-liked people in this community, and actually, some of them have vote yes signs in their yard, but they would never tell you how they really feel. There's no collective agenda. Every person in this group does not want one high school. They don't want to spend more money. They don't want new buildings. These are the things that keep being accused. It's about fighting for the long-term health of this community, and none of us believe this plan provides that. We want to, desperately, like those of you who are standing up and saying that. Second of all, it's not our job to provide a plan with details. It's your job to present the plan with all the details to earn the vote. But there has been a lack of details all along. And you all know there are months' worth of public records requests asking for details, and we have not received them. Some were answered, but many have gone unanswered. The accusation is also that we have not offered ideas, but we have. They've been publicly posted for a month where anyone could see them. And many of them aren't even ones that we came up with. They're ones that were presented in the past by committees that have spent hours and hours on this. One was presented by the OFCC, and it just didn't meet your agenda, so it was ignored, which I understand, but it was ignored. I knew politics could get dirty, but I just really never imagined that our leaders that we trust would attack publicly an elementary school mom in the public like happened today. I think it's time to take a serious look at what's happening in Forest Hills, and I do think it goes much deeper than a tax issue.
Thank you, Ms. Barber. Peggy Johnson.
As much as I hate public speaking, I thought I should take an opportunity after having the good fortune of working in the district for 13, 14 years to speak in regards to the bond issue. A couple of things. I'm not really into things that are new and shiny and do it just because everybody else is. My house was built in the early 1800s. My car has 204,000 miles on it. I actually bought it after the board meeting by a guy in the parking lot. It had 80,000 miles on it, and he only wanted $7,500, and it was sold. So when I speak about facilities or buildings or things, I think I speak about them truly when it comes to the students. First of all, I'm going to do this a little poetically, I would guess you could say. And I want you to think about this. Can you imagine buildings that are fully ADA accessible, where students with physical challenges of any kind don't have to leave class early or arrive late due to an elevator that is too small to accommodate the number of students who need it? Where in a fire drill, they don't have to be carried out in front of their peers in order to exit the building quickly and safely. Where everyone, including many grandparents, have safe and comfortable access to all of our classrooms and any of the events we put on our campus. Where the hallways aren't so crowded that a student who happens to be blind can actually access the Braille numbers and classrooms that are put on the walls without going through layers and layers of students. Where rooms have natural light coming in through actual windows instead of walls that have murals painted on them by students of the sun. Where teachers don't teach all day in one of those dark rooms with old carpet. Where ventilation actually equals high air quality. Did you know that children breathe a greater volume of air in proportion to their body weight than adults do? We need quality ventilation in all of our buildings because schools have much less floor space per human body than your average office space. The ductwork in the schools of the 1970s only delivers 1/3 of what is considered adequate fresh air in today's society. Where students can actually participate in coursework like engineering and architecture, where they can build models in an innovative lab and not doing it in our hallways or in our locker bays, where they're not conducting experience over the railing outside of my office or on the bleachers to get what they need to do, or on the roof. Where science labs don't have students crammed shoulder to shoulder when they're working with chemicals and gas. Where dual credit courses actually have the classrooms that support them. That includes the engineering, the architectural drawing. Where student collaboration isn't occurring in locker bays, where students are sitting and laying on carpet. That's old. Where art classes actually offer more wheels than 8 in our sculpture and ceramics class that served hundreds of students.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Can you imagine it? I know I can, and I hope that you can too.
Thank you.
You say it really fast.
Melanie Hartong.
Hi. I also have grown up here and spent most of my life here, and I am a parent of 2 children at Air Elementary, and I have the privilege of working for the Educational Service Center of Hamilton County in 2 other great Forest Hills schools, Maddox and Turpin. The most important obligation of any community is to educate its children. So thank you for honoring your commitment to my children and all students of Forest Hills. As we all know, on November 4th, residents will see a bond issue on their ballot that will cost $14.44 monthly per $100,000 of home value, and it will repair critical shortfalls of each of our district's aging facilities that have long been merely bricks and mortar surrounding the excellent education that happens within. Nearly 2 years ago, a much different facilities proposal was defeated, and as it was being promoted, we saw organized opposition groups forming, believing that they had more attractive alternative plans than what the district was proposing. In a democracy, people have a voice. So thank you for acting democratically and taking into account the voices of the public by hiring a professional public opinion surveyor to poll the voting public. The survey's outcome yielded one viable plan that had the support of a majority of our community, and this is the plan that we'll see on the ballot in November. The alternatives may sound attractive, but they've been proven to be undesirable by voters, and in some cases where we need to rely on money from the OFCC, where we lose local control and would have burdening strings attached to the money that we receive, these alternatives are kind of a dangerous combination of being undesirable and unattainable. These alternative plans have been stamped DOA by this community, but they're still touted as an option. Why? I can't answer that, but I can accept that the people that are supporting them are speaking freely, just as I'm doing right now, and that's a critical democratic principle. Also critical to a democracy is the notion of majority rule, the understanding that the best means to an end is embracing that what's good for the goose may not be good for the gander. A majority of survey respondents favored this plan. True support includes acceptance that sometimes pragmatism trumps idealism. So please join me in supporting this plan on November 4th.
Thank you, Ms. Hartog. Chris Newton.
Hello, my name is Chris Newton, and I'm the athletic director at Anderson High School. I'm very excited to have this opportunity in front of everyone tonight because I think I can speak on the upcoming levy from many different views. I'm a proud graduate of Turpin High School. I still live in the first house that my wife and I purchased in 1994. I've taught science and coached at Anderson for the last 6 years, and now since August I have the best job in the world as our athletic director. Most importantly, though, I am a father of 4 children. My 2 daughters are proud graduates of Anderson, and I have 2 sons, one a 10th grader at Anderson and one an 8th grader at Nagel. I want to speak tonight not about numbers, because those can be argued and debated for days depending upon your viewpoint. I want to talk about the things that I know, children and education. From every viewpoint that I see, we have a tremendous opportunity in front of us to make a difference in our community, but more importantly, make a difference for our kids and the education that they receive now and also in the future. As a graduate and now an educator in the Forest Hill School District, I'm very excited to see how the monies raised by this levy will positively impact our children, not only with their education, but also with their lives. For example, climate-controlled buildings can only positively affect the education that our students receive. We have some incredible kids and teachers at Anderson High School that accomplish some amazing things each day, and they do this, to be quite honest, in some very adverse conditions at times. I would love to see what our kids will accomplish when the learning and testing conditions of Anderson High School are up to date and on par with most other schools in the city and the state. As a homeowner, I have seen the impact that continuously failed school levies can have on our property values. I have taught in a school district that struggled with supporting school levies, and I have seen how this has brought on so many additional problems besides the education of their children to the residents of the district. Lastly, but most importantly, I want to speak for our kids. All the articles that we see in the newspapers are written by adults. I ask you all, have any of you ever talked to a student in the Forest Hill School District to see how they feel about the upcoming levy? There are many people in this audience tonight and in the community that feel much different than I do about this levy. But I still to this day have not heard from anyone on how the passing of this levy will not positively impact each and every child that walks the halls of a school in the Forest Hill School District. I ask of you to think of not only all the positive outcomes that there will be in the community of Anderson with the passing of this school levy, but more importantly, what a yes vote will do for the kids of Anderson Township. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Newton. Kristen Meyer.
Hi. I've been up here often over the past year or so because as a graduate of Forest Hills and a resident still, I'm a strong supporter of the schools, and with currently 3 kids in the schools, I was very interested in understanding a lot more about how our facilities were going to be addressed, particularly because my 3 were at Wilson. Now I have 1 at Nagel and 2 at Wilson. I was very tired of the conditions at Wilson and really felt something needed to be done, so I thought the best thing I could do was get involved. So I attended pretty much all of the special facilities meetings that were held here and other places. I've done my homework. I understand what the OFCC is. I understand what SSOE is. I understand the market research survey thoroughly. I understand all of the data. The bond issue is the most logical solution to our facilities problems. It solves all of our problems, takes our schools into the 21st century, and is fiscally responsible. In all of the experiences that I've had in looking at these options over the past year and all of the things that the board investigated, there was no other option that did this as well. There was no other option that was less expensive and fixed all of our issues while at the same time upgrading our schools. I talk to my parents often about this. They're empty nesters here in the Forest Hill School District, so I've been trying to gauge where they stand, and it wasn't easy. At first, they did not want to spend more of their money for the schools, even though they have grandkids in the schools. But what I tell them is, look, something has to be done. Our schools are not in good shape. We have handicap accessibility issues. We have security issues. We have roofs that leak. We have kids going to school in trailers. We have serious issues with our schools. And we live in this community. There's no excuse for those conditions. And I tell them, in everything I've learned, this is the most fiscally responsible way to solve these problems. In addition, I tell them that if we don't pass this, I have a serious concern for our community. If this fails again, what does that say about our community's support for our schools? It's not good. I just built a house here 2 years ago. And honestly, with the first grader in these schools, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I really don't. If this doesn't pass, I gotta take a serious gut check, take some time to think about the fact that she will be at Wilson for 5 more years, where there are 29 doors. There is no air conditioning. She's coming home like a wet noodle in the fall and the spring. She's walking alone from the music trailer back to the school sometimes. She had to go to the nurse one day, a little story, she got lost outside. Thankfully, the art teacher saw her and pulled her in. But I just don't know what I'm gonna do if it doesn't pass. So I'm grateful to see that some of our community leaders have stepped up in support.
Ms. Meyer.
And I urge you to vote yes for issue 4 on November 4th.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all of you who took the time to address us today. We do appreciate, we do listen to you. Item 8.1, curriculum update. Ms. Adams?
Today, Megan and I wanted to take a chance to speak with the board to really discuss our plans here in the district for developing a balanced assessment system and for implementing the next generation assessments. I know I've been communicating a lot of details with you in our correspondence, but I do feel like it's just time to give a chance for us to interact and for you to be able to ask some questions and get a much more livelier view of the changes that we're talking about. So first, I want to just express our goal, and that is a balanced assessment system. This is a complicated chart, but it's to visually show the complexity of such an issue. We work very hard to create a guaranteed and viable curriculum that all students can experience. And then once you have that in place, you need to have an assessment system that will judge and quantify the results. And so it's not an easy matter, it's very complex. And the main parts are a combination of classroom assessments, assessments at the district level, and assessments that are external, that give us a chance to kind of see where we stack up throughout the state and throughout the nation. And so we've worked very hard to understand what's the purpose of every assessment and how does this all fit together. And just looking at this chart, it can be dizzying to see all the words, all the pieces, and that's been what my department and the other administrators and teachers are working on, is to figure out how do we make the most sense of this in light of all of this change. So that's our goal, is that there's balanced assessment as a big key part of the curriculum instruction and assessment picture. I've been in many different circles with teachers recently, and one of them just looked at me one day and said, "Natasha, have you really explained this to the board? Do they really understand what we're up against? Do they really have a clue?" And I told them I'd be speaking with you today. And one, just to set the tone, I want to mention how we are dealing in Forest Hills with a combination of many second order changes. First order changes are the ones where you're tweaking something, or you're maybe extending something, or maybe deepening something that you're used to doing, and you can do all this change with the existing knowledge and skills that you have. Second order change is much different in that it's creating paradigm shifts that need to happen. We have to acquire new skills and new knowledge to be able to do this, and there becomes a new norm. And what I want to point out here is, if you look at every aspect, what teachers teach, how they teach, how we measure how the students do in our schools, as well as how we measure teacher effectiveness, all that is changing, and it's changing at one time. These aren't little tweaks. These are deep rooted changes that are affecting us, and we are not in a career where you can just kind of like shut down school for a few months, few weeks to get everybody up to speed and execute. We are constantly like continuing our jobs every day, keeping our students at the forefront while we're trying to make really fundamental change in a lot of the work that we do. So we want to take some time today just to give you a sense of what that feels like. I was going to take a minute to show this video, but I won't for now. I was meeting with some teachers the other day, and this conversation, this idea of a factory came up first. So many of you have seen this this very classic clip, and it's when they're sitting there they're at the chocolate factory, and the chocolate is coming down, and they're trying to wrap it up, and they sort of get a handle on it, although it gets a little bit overwhelming, and so they start shoving it in their hats, they're sticking it in their blouses, and are just overwhelmed by what's happening. And then a few minutes later, their supervisor comes in and is like, okay, speed it up. And that's how we feel kind of in education right now. It's like we're barely getting a handle on what we're doing with all these changes, and the state, the legislature, whatever, is coming in and saying, okay, now take on some more. It's a very overwhelming feeling, and we want to be very good at our jobs. And so I'm just wanting this picture to kind of stick in your mind for two reasons. Another one is this whole idea of factory. The great thing about education today is that we're moving to a place where we can have more personalized education than we've ever had. That this whole idea of factory model, moving from one room for 50 minutes to the next room to 50 minutes and just getting all these inputs, that concept is really kind of weighing or finding its way out the door. However, teachers kind of have this sense of we're more factory-like than ever because you're bringing kids in, you're checking their temperature, you're getting their assessment kind of like a dipstick. You're kind of saying, how are you doing? A few weeks later, you're diagnosing. A few weeks later, you're giving another assessment, and it's feeling factory-like to them. It's this rough balance of the science of teaching as well as the art of teaching and understanding how to make the best use of the information that we have. Just like doctors, when you're going in, you don't assess somebody from head to toe. You start with the least intrusive assessments first, and then you dig deeper. That's kind of how education works as well. But this is the image that we're feeling right now. And so I'm going to take the next few moments to share with you just the nuances of the new system. First, there is a little bit of good with these assessments. The good, I will say, one thing is the fact that the technology where these assessments will be given makes it a game changer for students with special needs. Universal design of learning is used to set up all the accommodations, and so capabilities inside of the system, whether it's an electronic calculator, a way to cover up answers as you go, a way to highlight, listening to it. There's just amazing features that technology brings that helps students have access to tests in ways that they never have really before without a lot of human input. And this isn't something that's just for a small group of students, it's for many students. The other thing is that with the growth of our brain research, our knowledge with technology, as well as just understanding assessments, we're able to assess things at a much higher level than we've ever been able to do that. And that's what these tests are designed to do. So in that respect, this is a positive moves forward. Two key things. One is there are two assessment companies that are creating our assessments. You've probably heard these words, I just want to clarify it for you today. PARCC is the assessment company that's creating the English Language Arts and the mathematics assessments. And AIR, the American Institute for Research, are the Ohio-created social studies and science assessments. That's what we'll begin testing in February of this school year. This next slide just gives you a sense of how the pathway works and how assessments from the day you walk in the door till we leave in May, how it looks. And so I want to start with the end in mind. In the spring, we have an end-of-the-year assessment that's called an EOY, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. It's more like the assessments we're used to taking. But in addition, there is somewhere in the February, March-ish time, performance-based assessments. Those two, the two on the far right that are bolded, they are the required assessments. Over time, the state is going to open up options to also give a diagnostic assessment and a mid-year assessment, as well as speaking and listening assessment that goes with it. So this is a big change from the past, and I share it with you visually just to get a sense of how it all lines up together and how this just represents one content area. This is just English language arts. This would be true also in math, also in social studies and science. And it's really important for us as a district, when I talk about that balanced assessment system, that we create not only a strong external accountability system, but that we have an internal system that's equally as strong, that we, as the educators in Forest Hills, stand behind. Okay, so getting into the detail a little bit more. As I mentioned, there's two key assessments, and this is our new vocabulary words for today. PBA, performance-based assessment. Those will begin in February, and those are going to take a lot more time in terms of writing and processing. There's a lot of reading and analyzation of text that students will be doing, and that's why it's starting so early in the year, because these tests will be scored by humans as well as machines. And the depth of knowledge that you have to do these kinds of problems will be greater. In the past, we were used to, on the OAA, for instance, you might have one indicator, one question, one standard being asked per question. Inside of performance-based assessments, you might deal with 3 and 4 assessments, or sorry, 3 or 4 standards inside of one assessment question. You're often asked to do multiple steps. You're asked to look at stimuli and answer questions that keep relating back to it, that really force students to persevere, to challenge when things are hard, and conquer texts that they're not used to reading. One of the things that this company at Park kind of promotes itself as, they say, these are going to be texts worth reading and problems worth solving. So in the old tests, everything was kind of made up and for that testing environment. These assessments will have true text, real-life text that will be complex and brought into the picture. As I said, that'll start in February and continue in March. Then after those are wrapped up, we will shift to end of year or end of course. End of year is used to represent like grade 3 or grade 4 end of year. End of course is referencing the high schools. Those are going to be, as I said, more short answer, fill in the blank kinds of questions that we're used to. They will be machine scored, and we'll be able to get a better sense of reading comprehension on those lower level depth of knowledge questions. Now, just to go into a little bit of detail so you can understand grade by grade what our students will be experiencing this year. And the first thing that I will say is that this chart has probably been redrawn 5 times since the spring of last year. So I felt, standing in front of the staff on October 17th at our PD Day, that was the first time that I was standing in front of them with some level of confidence that what I was telling them was accurate. And that is because Megan had to do some ordering of some assessments. And so they were actually asking us how many students are doing this, because this is the test they have to take. That's the only sense of confidence that we've had so far. So it's been extremely frustrating to know, as a teacher, well, are my kids going to be assessed on the old test, on the new test? What's it going to look like? And it continues to change.
And just to clarify, you
Yes.
didn't change this, the state changed it, correct?
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
Forest Hills didn't decide. It's kind of done upon us, unto us. So some of these changes that they made, I'm thankful for. They're smart changes. So let's start with that, 3rd grade. At first, there was going to be the old assessment, the old OAA in the fall, and then the spring OAA in the spring, plus the new assessments. They've decided that they're only going to require the fall OAA in the fall, and depending on the scores, will determine if a student is going to take the spring OAA or if they're going to move on to the Park performance-based assessment or end of course, or end of year actually. So that's 3rd grade, and luckily that's less testing for them. But for a little 3rd grader, it means they've taken their first round already. They'll start in February and they'll take an ELA PBA. Then a few days later, they'll take the math PBA. And then a few months later, they'll take the end of course, and so on. So it's a lot for them. 4th grade will be taking the Park English and math assessments, and additionally, the new AIR social studies assessment. And it's been a while since we've been assessed in social studies outside of 10th grade, so that will be a big shift for our teachers. 5th grade, it will be the English assessment and the math assessment, as well as the science assessment. That's more typical, that's more what we're used to, although we're used to just one part for each of those. Now this is 2 parts for each. In 6th grade, the math and English assessment, and then the social studies assessment has entered back into the mix. So that will be a big shift, a big change for our teachers. 7th grade, they probably have the lightest load, really. It's English and math assessments. In 8th grade, this is the real kicker. You don't want to be a very smart 8th grader, because if you are, you're going to take double the assessments. So right now, the state has a waiver that they have put in place with the federal government to try to get that removed. But at the very moment, what's expected is that they take the 8th grade English and math assessments, and if they're in the high-level Math 1 high school course, they will also take the Math 1 PARCC assessments that have the 2 parts of the PBA and the EOY or EOC. Additionally, 8th graders will be taking the science test, and that's something that they're used to doing. It's just usually 1 part, not 2. Are you tired yet? The 9th graders are, they're not usually assessed in this way. So this is a new level of accountability for our freshman teachers. They'll be taking the English course or the Math 1 or 2 end of course, depending on what subject they're in. 10th grade has gotten a break compared to how it used to be. It used to be that 10th grade is going to do the old test and the new tests, and that has really been tempered. So our 10th grade students will take the Ohio graduation assessment. That will be a part of the decision for graduation, and then they'll be added in the U.S. history end of course assessment. Now that is, what we learned in just talking to the state is that each group, English over here, math over here, science, social studies, each department at the state is kind of functioning in a different way. So social studies kind of went out on a limb and made their decision to randomly require the 10th graders to take this test, but it really doesn't affect their graduation. It's just something that they want them to experience. So I'm sure they'll be very focused, and I think that's a really important test to take. The 11th grade, they really do have the best. They don't have any assessments specifically for them. 12th grade, they're going to have a mixed bag. Ultimately, there's supposed to be an American government assessment that is for all seniors. But what's going to happen this year, it's kind of goofy in that first semester, the students who take the course will take a Forest Hills created common assessment. We put that into place last year for the first time. And then by second semester, the AIR assessments will be available. And that will be a new experience. So they're all 12th graders, all taking the same course, being assessed in 2 different ways. Again, it will not impact their graduation this year. So, these next charts, I won't read or go into the details of it, but just to give you a kind of a sense. The performance-based assessments for all subject areas are divided up into units. And so for PBA, there's 3 units of PBA and 2 units of EOY. And the state recommends, although we don't have all of the testing information that we need at this point to set exact schedules, they recommend that you don't do any more than 2 units a day. And those run anywhere from 50 to 75 minutes. Some might be a little bit longer, but that's a little bit of the range. It's looking like I'm misspeaking when I'm looking at the Algebra 1. That looks like 90 minutes for the PBA. And so what's important to note is this. All of these assessments are going to be taken online. And we kind of stepped out in an effort to understand what does it mean to have an entire grade level take an online assessment. What does that do if the freshmen are taking a test? What does that do to the 10th graders and the 11th graders? What happens if it's just the math course? What do we have to do in our system to prepare bring your own device computers for this situation? So we've been experimenting with the Aspire test, like I've been telling you about. And we've had a rough go of it, to be honest. We've learned a lot of lessons at both Anderson and Turpin, and we have our round 3 at Nagel tomorrow. And we've made adjustments along the way, all in an effort to get some good information, college and career readiness information about our students, but also to prepare the infrastructure. Because the time that it actually takes to do tests, it tells you 75 minutes, 60 minutes. The preparation for that, from an administrator's point of view, Brad and Brian and Dave Cameron have been working, and others at the high schools have been working for 2 months in preparation just to give an assessment that's 2 to 3 days long. And then the teachers had to be trained, and so then they had to spend time with the students. And it's all because of this bring your own laptop kind of situation. We're very blessed that we have an infrastructure that allows us to do our assessments online and be able to get a bunch done at one time, because our alternative is that you would set up a lab and 30, 60 people would be able to go in that lab, and then every 75 minutes you'd be rotating somebody in and out. That's what many schools are having to do. So we're blessed to be able to have this infrastructure, but there are 5, 7, 8 steps that it takes at times to get, and Christine, correct me if I'm wrong in explaining all the technical pieces, but you have to kind of lock the machine down, make sure there's not action in the background that would then like turn the computer off. So it's not just passing out sheets to bubble on anymore. Lots of complexities that are very, very time intensive. And that's why it's so important for us to find some balanced way to do this. Okay, well, go ahead and just flip through, Jean. Go ahead. This just gives more of the time. We try to give a quick look of the testing hours breakdown. So we'll just look at third grade, for instance. They are taking the state test, which it'll be a combination of 12.25 hours. Then you add to it the assessments that we've made a part of their day, which is the MAP assessments that they take twice a year at least, for a total of 16.25 hours as a third grader. And then you see the highest number of hours for testing it really belongs to the 8th grade students, as we mentioned. So it's quite overwhelming to think about how many hours do we have in a school year and how many hours are spent testing versus instructing. And that's really the challenge that we as the educators have and the teachers in trying to figure out how to balance all of that out. Okay, next up, these are just some basic reminders of what's different between how we used to do it and the new assessments. The big deal really is the online part. The fact that when you take these assessments, it used to be just like a single session. You would do math in one day and then it would be over and you wouldn't come back to it. Now math has at least 5 different times you would sit down and do your math. We have to get students used to using a calculator that's online and different online tools. It's not, you don't have a calculator that you hold in your hand. Students will not be handwriting their answers, they'll be typing all of them. And the level of questioning, really we're used to more of a kind of staying in the range of 1 and 2 in the depth of knowledge, and I'll show you that chart in a minute to give you a better picture of that. And a lot of these questions, especially PBA, are in the depth of knowledge 3 and 4. Again, all these things are things that our teachers are working on. They make high-level questions a part of their classroom. It's just never been to this extent, to this degree, on such a high-stakes way. Okay, this next slide, this shows depth of knowledge. Just to give you a quick, I don't want to get into the details, but we're used to questions like DOK 1, recall and reproduction, skills and concepts, basic reasoning. But we're used to state assessments kind of living in that arena. We're now moving to strategic thinking and complex reasoning, extended thinking and reasoning, that really just goes deeper and requires students not just to read a passage and answer some questions, to read 3 passages, analyze the connectivity of those passages, create pictures, and answer questions about them all in one setting. So we're going to take a little bit more of your time, and Megan's going to come up here and just show you the sense of what the test used to look like and what it's going to change to as we shift, just to give you one more sense of a picture, and then you can ask some questions.
So we're trying to give you some examples for the early grades and the upper grades. And I just put old and new in front of the titles as we learn these new acronyms. There's so many acronyms to learn in education. So this first example comes to you from the 3rd grade reading OAA. And basically you can just see that typically students are asked to read a passage and they're asked to do multiple choice questions. And then also they answer short answer and constructed response questions as well. So that's just one example for the old. And then with the new, typically students have to look at 2 different texts, answer multiple questions about both, and also do a piece of writing that asks them to draw textual support from both of those texts. So there aren't many PARCC sample items available. So the ones that are typically span across multiple grade levels. So you can see that this one is for grades 3 through 5, but it gives you an idea of what it would look like for a grade 3 student.
Well, it's just a simple thing. You can see there you have to scroll down in that story. So if a student doesn't realize they need to scroll, they might think the passage is right there what we see. And so it's little nuances to testing in this format that has the potential to throw our students, especially the younger learners who haven't been assessed in this fashion for long.
And if you're seeing the scrolling and the old examples, it's because they've been pulled as practice items for students, but our students were taking it on paper-based testing when they actually experienced it in the testing environment. Great. Oops. Ready? Thank you. Actually, I don't need it. So here's an old third grade math item. It's a very short word problem with multiple choice question associated with it. And then with the new, you can see that there are multiple steps involved. So after students read the problem, they have to drill down into all three options to select the operation and the numbers to complete the equation. So you've gone from identifying an answer in a multiple choice to choosing the correct part of the formula in 3 different places. Here's an old sample item for secondary example for reading. I just picked grade 8 reading. Looks just like the other ones did, where you read a passage, you answer questions about it, you'll do some short answers and a constructed response. And then with the new, this is actually an interesting example. So if you remember in the grade 3 example, they had to read 2 different passages, answer questions about it, write about both. For this example, since it is grades 6 through 8, so we're getting into the upper grades, they actually have to read 2 passages, watch a video, then write about all 3 of those things synthesized into one argumentative piece of writing. So it's much more rigorous in that way. And then to the right there, you can see that they have to take 7 items, determine which 4 help to identify the main idea, and put them in correct chronological order. So there's quite a jump there in the rigor.
Yeah, and these questions are called technology enhanced because you're doing something with a mouse. You might be putting something in a cycle. You might be moving things in order. You might have to do an online experiment where you're putting a fake chemical into a beaker and actually simulating the experiment online.
And then for math, we have what you would expect to see on the OAA. So you have your word problem, and then you have a multiple choice question. You're not seeing the written portion of that. That gives you an idea. And then for the new, you can see not only are they drilling down and choosing to complete the equation to figure out how to solve for V, but they also have to be able to type in V versus choosing what V is out of a multiple choice question. So that is much more challenging. And then just to show you some science and social studies examples, this is an old Ohio graduation test science item, multiple choice question. And then with the new, they're simulating a microscope experience to the left there, and then they need to place the different cell slides with the correct description on the right. So that's a significant difference in what they're being expected to do. It's much more performance-based. And then for history, a multiple choice question. And then with the new, I chose this because I used to love Oregon Trail. Students have to take the different items and place them where they go on the map. And then they also need to identify which mode of transportation will be the best mode to use to get those items there. So there's a much more interactive, much more interaction happening for students with the content there than there was with the multiple choice question.
So today we know more about this assessment than we have up until this point. There are test blueprints that go with each assessment for us to be able to dig in and understand how many questions there are going to be, what standards are they going to be connected to, what format will they come in. And we are just now, because we have more definitive information, rolling out these kinds of examples to teachers. So we spent time at the last PD day. We've spent time equipping principals to really understand so that we can narrow our focus. Because as you can tell, this topic is very complex. We want to make sure in our assessment system that we aren't just assessing whether somebody can use a mouse or not on a laptop or next to them. There's so much, we don't want to get tripped up on the technology. And so we've taken a lot of steps like flooding the elementaries with computers so they could be using them on a regular basis and not on a Tuesday because the cart is available. So we're trying to make technology more a part of students' lives to make that part more natural. Teachers are working hard to really follow the standards, and that's what we've encouraged the principals just to focus on, is that that's what matters. It's the instruction in the classroom. And that's what you can control. The rest of this you really can't control, and we need to put our best foot forward, equipping the students with making sure they're getting reading experiences and writing experiences that will kind of press them to a higher level. And we really want to take this as our approach in Forest Hills, that it's not about this test, this one day or even this 1 week or now just over several weeks. It's really about the learning that happens day in and day out. It's about those field trip experiences. It's about the relationships that are developed in the classroom. And we can't really make everything we do about these moments right here. We have to take care, so we have to make sure that we are not just doing things right, but working on the right things. And so that is really what our conversation is around right now. And that's why I know teachers are wanting me to come and express to you what they're feeling, how big this is, so that you can understand when we're talking about our report card, when we're talking about our results, that you understand what changes they are facing, and how it's not just the standards are new. It's not just we have a new test to give. It's not just there's some new ways of teaching with different technological tools, et cetera. And it's not just their evaluation system is new. All of it is new at one time. And we're under tremendous pressure and want to do well for this district. But our main focus is our students, and being distracted by all this and overwhelmed by all this sometimes takes us off our game. And we want to do everything in our ability to combat that. So we're taking a breath now so that you can ask some questions or comment, and just anything that we can do to help clarify this for you and help you understand how we're approaching it and what we're doing proactively.
I have a couple questions, if
Okay.
that's okay.
Yep.
First of all, a couple teachers, I've talked to a couple teachers over the last couple weeks, and they are feeling some of the stress of this. And I have to tell you, you read my mind, because it's confusing to us that don't live it every day. And I feel like I know more than I knew before, but I still feel like I need to know a lot more. But I have to tell you, the sense that I get from the teachers is that if they feel that they have the support from the top down, and I shouldn't put it that way because I don't like hierarchy, from administration, they can do this. But it's critical that they feel that you have their backs, you and everybody in central office. And I think that's great. A couple questions. One is pretty simplistic, maybe too simplistic. If Common Core, I know there are always going to be tests, but if Common Core goes away, what percentage of all these tests go away?
Well, the state assessments, the PARC,
right?
That's what Common Core is, ELA and math.
Right.
So that would disappear. Ohio has created in cooperation with AIR, the social studies and science. So just if Common Core would go away doesn't mean those two would go away, because that's a state
So
decision.
would you say half the testing would go away, or is it more
It's
than
not
that?
quite,
Or is it-
half in
there's
terms
the
of
80-20?
subject areas, but not half in terms of numbers,
Okay.
because there's ELA and math at every grade level.
All right, and maybe that is too simplistic. I know we recently had testing at, I think Anderson started it, or Turpin? Was it Turpin or Anderson?
Turpin went first,
Turpin,
then
Anderson, and
Anderson.
then Nagel, right?
Nagel's tomorrow.
Nagel's.
Mhm.
Nagel's tomorrow, okay. There were some glitches. And I guess, how do we know until you actually sit the kids down and actually administer the tests that we've worked out all the glitches? I don't even know if there's an answer. But if they're tests that sort of count, the anxiety level could be there to begin with before they even, turn on their computers or whatever. How do you, that just seems daunting to me.
Well, it is daunting, and just the whole idea of testing environment. It's chaos when people are walking around like, my laptop's not working, this isn't happening. And it's not like one issue, it's 17 kind of happening at the same time. These tests are timed, and we take a lot of pride in setting a testing environment. Well, you can't have that in the way that we've been used to in the past, when you're testing at all these different grade levels. And one of the things we've been able to do specifically in the high school, you can kind of shut down school for the grade levels that aren't taking it, so you can have just a smooth sailing with everybody. If we shut down school, there's a 20-day window for these assessments. You can't just shut down and let this group test, and then shut down and let this group test, so that everything can be perfect. We've got to find a way to do business differently, support that testing environment successfully, and keep instruction going, so that we don't shut down and put everybody in the gym or something during a testing period.
And Dallas has shared with me that he feels like we're in a better place than a lot of districts, but still, good luck. I mean, it does seem daunting.
Well, is it a combination of our infrastructure, the various devices, plus just the new testing all at once?
It really is all of that. It's the fact that, some tests work well on some devices, maybe not on others. We have a certain supply of district-owned devices that we know work, and those are more easily controllable than others. But it's back to that, what is a kid using on a regular basis? Like if I just hand you a laptop and say, here, take this test, and it's not part of your everyday work, there's that hump to get over. And so that was another reason why we wanted to go through these testing experiences, online for math and then online for Aspire, is to get the feel of what that looks like. Not to have test monkeys, but to truly experience and all the things that we need to think through. Because first we have to teach some problem-solving skills and a little bit of resiliency in the midst of this too. But that is like what the teacher's biggest fear is. Okay, so the access point in my room goes out, and now my scores aren't good because nobody could really attend to the test this day, and now I'm red and value added, and everyone thinks I'm a terrible teacher, and so that's just where their minds go. It's where their minds go, and who would blame them?
From infrastructure, though, do you actually have the bandwidth and the access points, or is that why you're talking about shutting down half the school until we're able to deliver the technology?
Well, we purposely, maybe Christine can jump in, but we purposely broke down Anderson, Turpin, and Nagel and did it in waves so we could isolate issues, so it wasn't the whole district doing it at one time. We have tested across the district in the elementaries, all schools, all grade levels, doing the math assessments. So we keep pushing our infrastructure. You want to talk about it?
Bandwidth is not an issue. The state or the test use something called proctor batching. So it takes everything and it takes it down to really small chunks.
Yep.
So we use that. Our bandwidth was not a problem. It was our support, being able to actually be there to technically support all of these kids at the same time. That was our biggest hurdle.
Yeah, we had to ship devices from Anderson to Turpin. We had to ship people from Anderson to Turpin to be able to carry this out. Megan was there for a full day. Christine was there for a full day. Forward Edge team was there for a full day. And again, our testing window is 20 days, and you have to have this whole team of support all around the district simultaneously, and it is a challenge. And right now, like Megan will get a book in January that will tell us some things, like what order we have to go in. Right now they're saying you could teach in between units, and then some things we read say you can't. And so we can't even create a schedule on paper right now. We cannot create a schedule until January, and the testing is in February that we are comfortable with because there are not enough known facts that are in our hands.
Julie, your point earlier, I know that our administration jumped on this at the very beginning, and there are a lot of school districts who did not, and they are in trouble. I hear about it at state meetings. So, compliments to you guys for that. Other thing, Julie, one of your other comments about if Common Core goes away, I'm not sure I'd say that it goes away, but if it's repealed in Ohio, they have plans to replace it with something. So it's not like the testing would go away, although in your chart...
It's not one for one, and it's not the identical testing.
It's not the identical testing, but there'll be certainly some type of testing that comes with the Massachusetts, if that's what they actually implement. So it's...
Well, and one of the reasons why we have chosen Aspire as a district as part of the ACT package is that the ACT is going to be part of the testing in the future. And so we are kind of building that roadmap and the infrastructure from 7th grade all the way up to experience that kind of assessment as part of the ACT family to support that college and career readiness, because it still is the test for the college readiness. So we're doing that on purpose. It was difficult, challenging, and some people are thinking, why are we throwing this test in here? There are lots of reasons for it. We're learning from it, and it'll help us paint that pathway. But it's just not something you whip up overnight and fully understand. And I don't even think some of this we'll understand until we get the results back, where you can sit down and really look at each piece.
I appreciate that explanation because I have been asked a number of times why we did Aspire now. That helps.
So does OGT change as well?
Not this year. OGT will still be in place, and that will determine the students that graduate. But the freshmen will be that first class that will be taking all these end-of-course exams. And if you'll recall, we shared at some point there's different ways that you can graduate, different ways to show mastery. You can pass these end-of-course exams and earn your points. You can get an acceptable level, what I don't know what that level is yet because it hasn't been identified on the ACT assessment, or you can like have a VOTEC kind of certification as a means to graduate from high school, which is a big change as well.
So currently, the OGT for next year won't happen.
It will happen for the current repeating freshmen. Like, they'll actually have the same pathway to graduation as their original graduating class. So they'll need to pass the OGT in order to graduate.
Well, thanks for all your time.
Thank you.
As I was listening to your presentation, I'm going to take a video clip of this, and next time I'm in Columbus, to lobby some of these people, we get into this complex discussion, I'm going to share some of that, because I think what you're going through gets lost in Columbus. Sure, people want to make change, but I think they forget about what happens down at the end of the food chain, all the work and all the effort, and what it really, how it impacts students. That's what I was trying to say.
Well, and we've purchased resources mostly. I'd say we're like 80% finished with purchasing supports for English language arts. We haven't made the math purchases yet. Maybe 10% have been made for math. We haven't gone to science or social studies. You can't process all this information and make good decisions all at one time, and so we've had to take it into pieces. So even being able to, so we figure out the change, being able to financially and resource-wise support it is the next big hurdle. So it's never ending.
Thank you.
Item 9.1, board discussion. Anyone?
I just have one thing. As we've all worked on the facilities issue, especially in this last year and a half, there are two aspects to it. There's obviously substance and there's process, and they're both important. And they're both important for the success of what we're doing for the district. And I just want to talk a minute, just for a minute, about process. And I think a lot of the people that spoke tonight made me even want to talk more. Melanie actually, toward the end, talked about respect. And we've all been, all of us, in one way or another, even newer board members, have been involved in a number of operating levies and bond issues. And in past, whether they're operating levies or bond issues, we've operated with respect of others' opinions. It's never been personal. And I'm talking about the district, how we've conducted ourselves. We've been very careful to never threaten. If X happens, then Y will or will not happen. All our literature has been reviewed before we've sent it out to make sure that we're doing it properly. I think a term from the old days was that we're squeaky clean. And we've also been careful and considerate of how we've engaged our teachers and our staff in the effort. And that's because when all is said and done, we know that we had operated from a position of strength in our position and honor in our presentation. And I just sort of want to remind all of us that as everybody, regardless of what your position is on the substance, as we go forward with this next week, especially with social media, which is just heightens all the communication, not only in numbers, but in emotion, that we be careful. We've been successful in the past on how we've conducted ourselves. We need to be mindful of the things we've done in the past and treat each other with respect. When it's all said and done, we're still going to be neighbors, we're still going to be colleagues, we still have the same people teaching our kids and the administrators running the district, and we're all going to be working together for Forest Hills.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I agree. Before we even voted on the bond, I think those of you that came to meetings, and certainly the board heard me say, regardless of anybody's opinion, we're listening to each other and we respect each other's opinions. And I think that we have continued to do that. Certainly, I know the time I've spent on the committee, That's always been a primary focus, and I'm confident the committee has honored that, not just in spirit, but in practice. Anyone else? Okay, items 10.1 through 14.4 will be consent agenda items. 10.1, Child Focus, Inc. Service Agreement. Ms. Ryan?
Item 10.1 is the Child Focus Incorporated Service Agreement for this school year. I've given you some background recently and last year as we began our discussions and the needs assessment around this particular contract. This contract allows us to continue to provide services ranging from the consultative prevention services to more intensive therapeutic services for our students in our elementary buildings. Our council has reviewed and made revisions to this proposed agreement. We are recommending you approve the services agreement between Child Focus and Forest Hills.
Thank you. 11.1, Outdoor Education Program. Ms. Adams?
We'd like to make a motion to approve the outdoor education program for the 2014-2015 school year. This is our time we always come to talk about Camp Kern, and the dates are listed there. Cost per student is that is the same as it has been in the past several years, and we do have provisions in place to take care of that if financial assistance is needed. So we recommend that you approve the outdoor education program. In item 11.2, I'm bringing forward another supplemental book for English Language Arts for grade 7. It's a nonfiction book, Dare to Dream, 25 Extraordinary Lives, and we're just letting you know that we're going to be putting it on display in our office until the next board meeting when you would make an official approval.
Thank you. Human Resources Report, item 12.1, Ms. Carnahan.
In our HR report this evening, item A is retirement. As you will notice, these are all teacher retirements, and they are effective at the end of our school year, but when you add these together, it's 163 years of experience for Forest Hills. So certainly, it's early in the year. We have these folks for the rest of the year, but we will certainly miss them when that time comes. Item B is a retirement of one of our bus drivers, effective going back June 1st, 2014. Item C is a resignation. D is a leave of absence. It is in accordance with Ohio Revised Code. Item E, we have some change of assignments. Item F, change of salary. G and H are both salary schedules, and you will see exhibits for those. Item I, which includes J, K, L, and M, would be appointments. And under item J, for the first item, I would like to take just a moment of your time to introduce to you our new Parent Resource Coordinator. And Alicia Champion is with us this evening. Alicia, if you want to say hi to everyone. This is Alicia. And we're happy to have you. Welcome aboard. And also, you see a number of other appointments there in item J. I will say most of these are probationary contracts that are now being converted into regular contracts. It continues on. Classified staff, we actually have Corey Forsey here on a probationary basis, so this is the beginning of the probationary period. We have lifeguards and bus monitors. Item K, these are some special services appointments. They're part-time for this school year. And that goes on through page 5. Page 6, item L, we begin to see all of our supplementals. These are our coaches and advisors, and several pages, as you will notice. To page 9, item M, substitute personnel. And I would let the board know that we have increased our FTE by 1 since last month, and the FTE is now 778.59. The superintendent recommends the board approve the personnel items as listed.
Thank you. Item 13.1, payment in lieu of transportation. Mr. Johnson?
Yes, I have a motion to approve the payment in lieu of transportation as the resolution is presented. The resolution for payment in lieu of transportation, payment not to exceed $300 is prorated over the school year for conveying students to and from the schools that you see listed here. Each of the students is a resident of the Forest Hill School District. The treasurer recommends the board adopt the payment in lieu of transportation resolution as presented.
13.2.
Replacement of synthetic turf at Turpin High School. Bids were opened and read on Friday, October 10th for the replacement of the synthetic turf field at Turpin High School. The complete bid tabulation and recommendation are shown in the attachment. The treasurer recommends the board award the contract to the low bidder as shown in the attachment.
And
just really quick to point out the source of funds for that. Would you comment on that, please?
It's all being paid out of the sinking fund that was set aside by the board, or created by the board back in 2003 for the replacement of the fields. There's no tax dollars being used to pay for this. And we will start December 1st.
On the payment in lieu of transportation, I see VLT Academy. They sold all of their stuff. I'm assuming we actually don't have any students.
Well, we had students enrolled there at the start of the school year, so that's why they were listed on here.
Okay. They still get the money?
Well, not if they're not attending, no.
Okay. Building's empty.
Right.
Right.
And then item 13.3.
This is a resolution approving the agreement for design professional services for the facility construction renovations. It's a motion to adopt the resolution approving an agreement for design professional services and construction for the renovations and services as presented. The superintendent recommends the board adopt the resolution approving agreement for design professional services with SSOE Incorporated for facility construction and renovation related to the November 4th, 2014 bond issue.
Ray, could I ask a question about that, please?
Sure.
Could you just sort of describe what the process was for, we put it out there, how many entities were interested, how we narrowed it down, and how we got to SSOE, please?
The board approved this going out to advertise for it. I believe at the August meeting, we advertised for bids. We had 20 firms ask for a complete detailed.
Do you say advertise for bid, request for qualifications?
Request for qualifications, correct. I'm sorry. We had 20 firms that asked for the detailed RFQ. A couple of those were clearinghouses, so it was posted on public websites, and so I don't know how many may have looked at it. A couple of them weren't design firms, but may have provided bits and pieces of that, and so they asked just out of curiosity. We received 7 respondents to that. We went through the RFQs. Dr. Jackson, Rick, and I went through those. We used a matrix to determine the 3 highest qualified and brought that to the board in September. The resolution, when passed, allowed us to begin negotiating at that time for the first time on cost with the firms. And we were only allowed to negotiate with the number 1 ranked firm. It could only move down to number 2 if negotiations didn't prove to be successful with number 1. So the document that you see is kind of the fruit of that. Bricker and Eckler, actually we kind of worked everything out over the course of the last couple of days, and what you see is what we've worked out.
And I can tell you that the contract document is a standard AIA contract. It's 28 pages long, and if you all look through it, you see the underlined and the crossed out sections that will show you how much of the standard contract is no longer standard. I did go through it. I wouldn't say it is with an attorney's eye, but with the critical eye to see that it had been given careful scrutiny by legal counsel. I'm not going to pretend to substitute my judgment for the attorneys we have for the district with an expertise in this area. But it got more than a once-over. I can tell from the revisions that were made that there was very careful legal scrutiny given to the document.
Yeah, I also want to point out, I had a number of questions, and fortunately Ray was able to get back to me before the meeting. But one of the things that I was interested in was the fact that it appears as though we got a very favorable rate. I'm usually interested and concerned about that. favorable rate compared to non-OFCC as well as OFCC agreements that at least our council had. Am I saying that correctly, Ray?
Correct. Yeah, I think what legal counsel was able to provide us is what she has found over the years. The matrix that I provided to you is typically what you see in the fee structures for OFCC projects. And if I remember off the top of my head, it was 16+%, and our cost here around, I think around a little under 7% net for everything.
Any other questions or discussions on this item? Thank you. Item 14.1, resolution designating an investment advisor. Mr. Teffer.
Item 14.1, 2, and 3 are really the rest of the financing team for the bond issue. The board has already approved bond counsel, Dinsmore and Scholl, at a previous meeting. Item 14.1 is the investment advisor. This is the group that would take the draw schedule from the architect based on when funds are needed and invest out accordingly. And we're recommending the board adopt the resolution designated Fifth Third Securities as the investment advisor. Item 14.2 is really our in fact, my right arm person with regard to all the financial compliance pieces from a fiduciary standpoint would be the district's person there at the sale of the bonds and making sure that obviously all the funds are maximized from the district standpoint. Obviously, I've already worked with this person. Their agreement was contingent on the board approving them, but they've worked the last month looking over the proposals that we've received for underwriting. So recommending the board adopt the resolution designated Huntington Investment Company as the municipal advisor. And 14.3 with a bond issue of size, it was very important to have a team of underwriters that will maximize the district's funds for this. We've put together a team, a lead and a couple of co-managers that will help get this issue to market and maximize the funds available to complete all the projects we're talking about. We have 3 leaders in the industry. We're recommending the board adopt the resolution designated Fifth Third Securities, PNC Capital Markets, LLC, and RBC Capital Markets as bond underwriters. There will be percentages of the project that will be associated with each of those 3.
It doesn't change our costs at all.
Doesn't
correct?
change our cost. We did open up, part of the resolution is there may be a fourth, if there's truly an opportunity and a need to have a retail, we may have somebody on the ground closer to this to be able to satisfy retail needs of this issue. So we left the door open for that as well. Like I said, it's been about 6 weeks. I believe we've fulfilled best practices in the industry to put together this team, and I feel very comfortable. We haven't pulled all the team together yet. We hopefully will do that after our issue passes in November. So that's 14.1, 2, and 3. And 14.4, the treasurer's report, obviously item A, we have our donations. Big month of donations. We did get Anderson Athletic Boosters summarized a lot of their donations over the last year, so over $59,000. That list is there, or at least the biggest items on there. Another large contributor is Wilson Elementary PTA, but you see the entire list on that item. Item B, we have a statement of board accounts. All funds are in good condition. We have 3 of our federals where we have negative condition at the end of the month, but we have payments pending. So those are allowable conditions at month end. Item C, we have the general fund receipts on schedule, or on close to 40% of our projected revenue received. And D and E is the breakdown of our expenditures. Once again, right on target for a 3-year average of our spending through month end. Monthly bank reconciliations, you don't see a lot of changes there yet because this is the end of September. But hopefully you'll see a page at your place. I put a meter investment recap. So we have began, based on our cash flow investing, as we brought to the board last month. We've gone out over 3 years with significant yield increases. I'll summarize this as we go through, but this was the first, our first jump into this market. Meter's been a good partner, and you can kind of see how we have the funds spread according to both agencies as well as CDs. So like I said, our list of investments won't show that till next month. We'll actually show some different information at the November meeting. And item H, we have the amendments to the appropriation. Changes mainly to federal programs, no change to general fund. Item I, we're asking the board to approve board service fund expenses. And item J, this is an issue that it's important to share. This is the requirement that we have to do in order to meet our facility needs. As we've said in the past, we are funding facility needs out of our operating budget. This is the transfer that will go from the general fund to the permanent improvement fund to complete the projects that Ray and his team have been working through for the summer of 15. We hope this will be, if not the last, one of the last times we need to do this. And we can put operating dollars, leave operating dollars back in our operating budget. So as recommended, the board approve these items as well as items 10.1 through 14.4 as presented.
Forrest, do you care to comment on our interest?
Our interest is now up to $60.
It's going to get better.
Which is up from $40 last month. These are what we used to use for our permanent improvement for our maintenance. Back in the day, back when in the 90s, this was $20,000 per month. And, or even more than that. It was up to $1 million. We were spending $1 million a year in interest money. So now we have $60. So there is.
But it does annualize to almost $2,000 a year.
Yes.
Question, you commented on this, but our revenue received to date, we finished the first quarter, we're on target, because I wonder where we are just as far as property tax paid, economy, no surprises.
Still some delinquencies, but nothing out of the ordinary right now.
I move that we approve items 10.1 through 14.4.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd just like to bring up just one other thing with the permanent improvement, the maintenance portion of the levy, is that, there was some question on where would that money go. We're spending $600,000 this year. It is true that with new buildings, we won't need that money, but it's still with us. As we go through, in the past, we've spent $1 million a year on our buildings. Recently, we've spent much less than that. In the 08, 09, it was in the tens of thousands, if I remember correctly. So because of where we were. Here, we're putting $600,000 out. I think the district over the years has shown that when there is abundance, it's treated as a rainy day fund. It is not used just to be used. It is saved for when we need it. And that would be the case here.
Mr. Teffer?
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
Mr. Hemmelgarn?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes. Reports to the Board of Education.
Hey, Jim, I was going to say something right before you said
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Tepfer, so you were pretty quick on that. That's okay.
I'm sorry, Tony. I said anyone else.
I just wanted to point out again that I was around when the turf fields got put in at Anderson and then at Turpin. And the joke that night at the board meeting when Anderson got theirs approved was what happens if 8 or 10 years from now we don't have the money to replace it. because, Marymount had their turf field, and how could 2 turf fields possibly get enough rental dollars? And now you can't go anywhere without turf fields, and there's still not enough time for them. But anyway, the joke was that night, well, if we don't have enough money to replace them, then we'll just have to plant grass again. And so in a short period of time, thanks to Ray Johnson and to our community and everybody else who's used those fields, we've had money to now replace 2 of them. And the price total for the Turpin field in the beginning was just under $600,000. And to be able to replace it for $289,000 or less is, 8-9 years later is unreal. So thanks to everybody out there who uses the fields, and good job, Ray.
Well, we've got the money almost ready to replace the next Harmony Anderson already, so I'm glad to say I'm going to be doing this. 4 installations of the money.
They're going to have to turf the baseball fields now, right, Chris? Oh, okay, there we go. He's got his hands up, yeah.
Business Advisory Committee report, Mr. Tepfer?
No meeting since the last meeting, so we'll have one in the next month.
The Forest Hills Foundation for Education. The community outreach team reports that Mercy has agreed to become a sustaining premier partnership with the foundation. I don't know if I'm authorized to tell at what level, but it is substantial, and Mercy and Wellington continue to step up to the plate and demonstrate what a substantial partner they are, not just to the Forest Hills School District, but also to the Foundation for Education. So we thank them as always. The PST prep and practice sessions have been very well attended. The next Nagel will be the location for the Regional Destination Imagination Competition. That'll be on March 14th of 2015. The Distinguished Alumni Luncheon was very well attended. There were well over 100 people in attendance, so that went well. I hope we'll be able to, I think that formula seems to work, so I guess that's what we'll do next year. We'll see. The soiree, what are we calling this? The Soiree for Success at the home of the Marinicks will be on November 15th. I've already registered. If the board has not, you should. And certainly anyone else that is listening to this, I would highly recommend you register. That's on November 15th, and it really ought to be a great event. And the Executive Committee of the Foundation continues to work on its strategic plan, has had a number of meetings, one last week. I think there's another one Thursday, as they continue to work on their long-term goals. And also, there have been some additions to the board. I'm not sure, I can tell he's been nominated. I'm not sure it's been addressed to him, but I think there's been some really great additions to the board, and it's wonderful. Thank you.
We'll point out there are a limited number of tickets available for the soiree, so you do need to get D correct, so you need to get your reservation in sooner rather than later.
And my wife reminded me this evening that I have not done that. Sorry.
The Legislative Liaison Report, Randy?
2 things. First of all, the legislature has been either out of session because they're all out campaigning, or the sessions they have are minimal to receive bills. The Common Core continues to take all the spotlight as far as education, and there were some committee meetings were scheduled. They were on again, off again. I don't know whether they're going to reschedule them before the end of the year or not. Had intended to go up to share, and actually, Mrs. Adams, I was grateful that you gave the presentation you did, because to share the frustration at the end of the chain when all these changes are proposed, and of course they're proposing more if we withdraw, whatever, exit from Common Core, it will be filled with something, and so it would be yet another transition for our administration to go through. So without getting into discussion on Common Core, but just talking about the end result and the administrative piece of it, and the cost to our schools, by the way, not only in time but also dollars and materials, as you pointed out earlier. That's what I want to try and convey, that we need to get this straightened out. The second thing, I thought it was kind of interesting, Senator Kearney, who is I believe he's the chair of the Senate Education Committee, tomorrow will be introducing a bill to increase the school year by 8 weeks. Now, I don't expect that to go anywhere, but I thought it was kind of interesting. I've always been a proponent of increasing the school year by, a day or two here every year, but 8 weeks, I thought that was kind of interesting. Like I said, I don't think that's going anywhere, but I thought it would be something interesting for this group to be aware of, and you'll probably hear some media on that.
I heard him talk on it this morning, and noticeably absent from his discussion was how we would pay for that.
Well, actually, in the bill, I think the state is supposed to be funding that. That's why I'm really sure it's not going to go anywhere. But anyway, that's all I have to report.
The Safety Committee report. Julie?
The Safety Committee this month was facilitated for the first time by John Eckert, and John did an awesome job. And if you'll just bear with me for a minute, I think this is really important, and not only important because safety and security of our kids are utmost for all of us, but it also ties in with some of the stuff, some of the things that we are talking about doing in the future. So the first thing we talked about was John had asked me to do a little report on where we've been since I've been on the committee. So I met with Ray, and Ray helped me prepare a little report, and I'd like to just go over with you what I've seen since 2005 when I got on the board. First of all, the district access to buildings, we have buzz-in systems, we identify all visitors, they have to stop and sign in, we have badges, we've added cameras, especially outside the buildings. We've increased training and staff awareness, most notably recently, over a year-long effort to educate and train administration, staff, and students in the ALICE program to empower and give all of us more ownership in our own safety. We even reached out to our non-public partners to assist with training. We have fire and tornado drills now. We have adult crossing guards at some of our schools, Summit and Sherwood. As far as the safety services of police and fire, we have great relationships in Anderson Township and the village of Newtown. We work as partners in a spirit of cooperation. Ray says anytime we need something, we can pick up the phone and call when we need something. We've been meeting one time a year at the command center at the government building, which is very interesting to see if there's an emergency, how that would be addressed. The big events of assistance that the police and fire give to us or help us with are drills, band expo, after prom, theater events, and big events like the Anderson Turpin football game. As far as the township goes, we have also enhanced our working relationship with the township. We have a representative now, Steve Sievers, that comes regularly to the safety committee. He's awesome. We have crosswalks now where we didn't before. Mike Hartzler was instrumental at crosswalk at Turpin. That's always been a dangerous spot. We have signage, especially around school zones. Steve Sievers was instrumental with that. We have sidewalks, and we have a good, strong walk-to-school program. Future plans include every building having a secure vestibule. If any of you have been to IHM, you walk in and you're in an enclosed area before you're granted access to the building. We are hoping to do that in all of our schools and alleviate any disparities that exist among the buildings. We hope to bolster video cameras, interior and exterior. We hope to have more electronic access to various parts of the interior with cards. Air conditioning, if we get more air conditioning, it means not leaving doors opened. And we are also talking about, hope to move the bus compound off the Anderson campus, which alleviates congestion. And we're still in talks with the township and others to do that. All right, briefly, I'll go through the rest of it. The Anderson Township Fire Department has 2 new members on the committee. One is, you're going to have to help me with the pronunciation because I'm not sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Battalion Chief Fred
Buap.
Buap? Thank you. He's the operations chief. He's in charge of school safety, and his main focus is on communicating, getting to know everybody with the district, fire and police. He reported, and I didn't realize this, but now I know, that they no longer go to our athletic events. They used to be there, but they don't go there anymore due to budget cuts, but they say they can be there very quickly if we need them. Chief Rick Martin, who is responsible for life safety, also talked. He's responsible for day-to-day safety in the schools. He's been to every drill at the schools this year, and he also is getting to know people. Anderson Township Safety, Bob Getke reported. As of the time of the report, we had only had 2 school-related arrests so far, and we had had 1 canine search, and he thought that we had a really good start to the school year. Steve Sievers reported for Anderson Township, and you probably are aware of these items, but Clough is done. The sidewalks on Bartles were due to be done in October. I think they're done now. And sidewalk on Clough near Y is due to be done in November. Chris Wolfer talked about student health. The nurses from Anderson, Nagel, and Chris had before school training. All staff were educated on choking, AEDs, and chronic medical issues. We have over 400 health plans for kids, which just blew me away. Over 270 of which have to deal with allergies. I had no idea. That's a huge number. We also trained our bus drivers concerning medical concerns, and we trained on food guidelines. The last thing I want to talk to you about, I know I'm talking a lot tonight, but I think it was a really important meeting. We talked about a group, John Bailey, Dave Spencer, and Rob Fellows talked about going to a school safety conference. I think it was in Columbus. It was put on by educators, specifically for educators, and highlights from that are, things they talked about are, who are the first responders? Typically, I think the statistic was 60% of critical incidents are over by the time police and fire arrive. So really, the first responders are the people in the building. So we need to own what happens from the get-go. They talked about students' use of technology during crisis, what's appropriate and what's not, and we got into a really good discussion about that. You know, if God forbid someone was shot and somebody texts people and it's out there, I mean, so we're going to work with our kids on what's appropriate to use technology for. Parent reunification is big.
Yep.
Currently, we have holding areas for children and parents. We have mental health support teams. We have checkpoints for identification. We have medical teams set up. But we're a little soft, and we're going to work on the reunification with parents. So that's one of the things that is a focus for the upcoming year. So that's pretty much it. I left out a lot. I gave you a lot, but thank you.
Thanks.
I might comment that the areas where you said we're going to make some additions, the security vestibules, the camera, the technology, air conditioning, so we don't have to keep the doors open, and moving the transportation off the Anderson campus, are all contingent upon our bond in November passing. So hopefully that's something we'll be able to do. Policy Committee, I don't know if that's Randy
We're going to
or
let Randy
Julie.
do that because
Okay.
I talked a lot.
Well, I was going to say Julie and I will jointly present that, but the Policy Committee met on October 8th. Mrs. Bissinger and I attended on behalf of the board. Dr. Jackson attended. Our Neola rep was there, and Mrs. Monk did an outstanding job of facilitating what is actually a fairly complex process. Just to point out, we looked at, I think it was 26 different policy changes, and not one of those was initiated by the district. These were all mandated thanks to our friends in Columbus or Washington. But I will say that, I mean, these are required, so there was a lot of discussion, but it's not optional. It's action that we must take. I do have the binder here if anybody would like to go into depth. It's in our board docs if you really want to take a look at it. But I simply wanted to point out that, like I said, these are all required. We do have an organization that keeps us current. That's really important because we're held accountable to make sure that every time a law is passed, whether it's in Columbus or Washington, that when they require that we make a policy change, that we are keeping those up to date. And like I said, with the group that we have working on it, our Neola, as well as guidance from Dr. Jackson and Mr. Tepfer, and with Susan's help, I really feel confident that we are up to speed on all these various policies. There was a point, not too distant future, where we may not have been, but like I said, at this point, I really feel like we're buttoned up. If you have questions on any of the policies that we looked at, either Julie or I or Dr. Jackson, I'm sure would be happy to answer questions. But like I said, since these are mandatory, it's really, I'm not going to go through them.
Well, I'm really pleased that we subscribe to this Neola service and are able to get the heads up when it's necessary to change one.
They're great, and you know what's really, really great about this is it truly is a team effort on how we do this. If there's a policy that is in a particular area, like if it's technology, Christine would look at it. If it's special needs, Betsy would look at it. Those policies are looked at before they get to us, and Dallas sits in with us as well, and we have some really good discussions. I am convinced we do good work on that committee.
There are some choices that we get to make, and within a framework, but, like I said, I'm confident that we're doing the right thing for our district.
Thank you. Saga, Julie, I think you had that meeting?
I'm sorry, I forgot to clarify. This is first reading, no action obviously
Right.
required today, but if you have questions over the next month, that's when we'll take action next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was the board rep at the October 14th, 2014 Saga meeting, and I have to say yet again, they are so grateful we come, and it's a good relationship we have with them. I'm glad we go. More briefly than the last report, I promise. Substance Prevention Week is called A Healthy Me is Drug-Free, is in October, and the focus is on making healthy choices. It was formerly known as Red Ribbon Week. We're not calling it that anymore. In the high schools, it's October 21st through 24th. Morning announcements. There is a Twitter account Above the Influence that you can log on to, and there would be gift cards given away on a daily basis. The Teachers Academy from Anderson and Turpin are instructing a Friday class with all of the 4th grade classes. NAGLE is October 21st through the 24th, organized by the Superhawks group, and Carolyn Heller is the counselor. There's, again, the Twitter page. There's a Spirit Week competition, homeroom discussion activities, and there's a pledge to be drug-free. Elementary buildings, October 27th through the 31st, which is this week. Healthy Me is drug-free. PTA building representatives assisting the counselors with various activities and judging decorating contest. Morning discussion activities, a pledge to be drug-free, door decorating activity, wear red on Wednesday, and then again they're doing the activity with the Teachers Academy. The Youth Summit is November 18th, and it's at the Lutheran Church on, help me out. Bernie, thanks. I get Burns and Bernie mixed up because my husband grew up on Burns. But it's November 18th, and kids are randomly selected to go to that. There will be students from from Anderson High School, Turpin High School, McNick and Miami Valley Christian Academy, grades 9 through 12. They're divided into small groups by grade level. The volunteer facilitators will be from UC and Xavier, as well as youth ministers. And at the end of the small group activities, they will actually be doing short videos that will be presented at the end. They used to just go up and do live presentations. I think this is even going to be better. So you are welcome to come. It's pretty enlightening. I think most of us have been to that in the past. And the 5th quarter event, that's the last thing that I wanted to talk about. That was the event that was sponsored by Saga and I think Parkside as well, where there was supposed to be a concert in the soccer field after the game. For those of you who went to the game or didn't go to the game, the weather was really bad. So they moved it to Parkside. Attendance was not great, and they think it would have been great if it had been on site. So they're not giving up. They're going to do it again next year. So.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much. We don't have an executive session. Our next regular board meeting is November 24th, 2014, 7 p.m. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Don't forget to vote.
Don't forget to vote. November 4th, don't forget to vote.
So move to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Tepfer?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Hemmelgarn?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissinger?
Yes.
Dr. Heiss?
Yes.
Mr. Fruman?
Yes. Thank you all for coming.